Hello, our amazing listeners of Neurocareers doing the impossible. It's your podcast host, Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, or simply Dr. K. And I'm excited to welcome you to the second season of our podcast, exploring entrepreneurial careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies. Have you ever wondered what it takes to transform brain science into groundbreaking products and services? Are you curious about the fearless visionaries who bridge the gap between neuroscience and entrepreneurship to change people's life and reshape our world? Are you ready to explore how to navigate the uncharted waters of neurotech entrepreneurship? In season 2, we're diving deep into the world of entrepreneurial ventures in neuroscience and neurotechnologies. If you are looking to create an immediate impact and translate your neuroscience and neurotech ideas into innovative services that truly make a difference in the world, this season is tailor-made for you. Join us and learn from the best in the field about succeeding in the entrepreneurial journey in neuroscience and neurotechnology where innovation meets impact. We've got an incredible lineup of guests who are not only shaped their careers, but have also made a profound impact on the field. Throughout this season, we'll explore the captivating stories of visionaries who've risen to the challenge, who've turned obstacles into opportunities, and who've innovated in ways that are changing the landscape of neurocareers. So, whether you are a seasoned professional in the field, an inspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the intersection of science and business in this ever evolving arena, the season promises inspiration, education, and a glimpse into the exciting future of neurocareers. I am Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, the founder of the Institute of Neuroapproaches, where I help people establish successful careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies through career coaching and education. So let's dive into the entrepreneurial journeys that are shaping the future of neuroscience and neurotechnologies together. Tune in now into the thrilling episode number 64. Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Neurocareers Doing the Impossible Entrepreneurial Journeys podcast series. Today, we have the pleasure of delving into the realm of emotional, cognitive, and behavioral analytics with our distinguished guest, Frédéric Simard. Frédéric is the CEO of React Technologies and a visionary on a mission to understand how people interact with the world around them. His company, React Technologies, has developed an extraordinary system that excels in emotional, cognitive, and behavioral analytics. What sets it apart is its remarkable balance between flexibility and performance. At the heart of their innovation is Nucleus-Hermès, a cutting-edge multimodal biometric glasses device designed to measure a range of biosignals with minimal intrusiveness. These biosignals, including brain waves, facial muscles, skin conductivity, and heart activity, provide insights into the wearer's state of mind. Imagine having the ability to decode emotions and cognitive processes through wearable technology. Frédéric and his team's pioneering work at React Technologies is making waves in marketing and entertainment, pushing the boundaries of human experience assessment. Their groundbreaking solution, which encompasses the Nucleus-Hermès and suite of analytics algorithms, is poised to transform the way we understand and interpret human behavior. In this episode, we'll journey into the fascinating world of emotional and cognitive analytics with Frédéric Simard. We'll explore the technology behind the Nucleus-Hermès and how it can reshape industries, gain insights into the future of biosignal analysis, and discover Frédéric's own entrepreneurial journey. So join us as we step into this captivating conversation with Frédéric Simard, CEO at React Technologies, and embark on a voyage of innovation and insight. So, welcome, Frédéric. It's a great pleasure to have you today on our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you please introduce yourself and also tell our listeners where you are joining us from what part of the world?
Thank you for the fantastic introduction. You've done your homeworks. You've presented React in a fantastic way. Thank you very much. My name is Frédéric Simard. I'm CEO of React Technologies. We're based in Montreal, Canada. And as you put it, we're experts in emotional and cognitive analysis. We've developed a system that aims at capturing this data in a very flexible way. Our vision is a fully wearable system. So you can move around with it. You can explore the city with it. You can watch a movie with it. So flexibility is all about being able to record anywhere.
Thank you very much. What would you say are the most distinguished feature of Montreal that everyone who visit needs to see? What would that be?
Montreal has a European vibe. So many movies are shot in Montreal. And as we watch movies, they generally put it as being in Europe. So sometimes Hollywood, when they want to take some shots from a European city, use Montreal, the old port, as a place where it carries this European vibe. And the other defining features, I believe, is the spontaneity of the city. Montreal is a place where you don't need a plan. You, especially in the summer, you just walk around and something is there. I mean, it's just like it has a very festive vibe all summer long, and there's always something going on downtown. So I think this is what people appreciate a lot of Montreal. It's a great city, great place. People are nice. It's a safe city, and I think altogether this is a great place to visit.
Thank you so much. I think many listeners may want to visit it already after your introduction, and maybe even more when they learn about the things that your company is doing in Montreal, I think, which are amazing. So let's dive into that. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your product that you are developing at React? And maybe you can talk about it as something that our listeners can imagine wearing. Yes, we're talking about emotions, about how people feel in certain situations. So maybe let's give our listeners a feel of what your company creates.
So React Technologies, we specialize in emotional and cognitive state. As a general statement, we try to capture as much of the state of mind of people that wear the product, wear the system. We see ourselves as explorers of the human mind. We, as humans, we live in a physical space. We have a body, we walk around, and over the course of human history, obviously the physical space has been mapped in every region. So we have very detailed mapped of the physical space that the planet we're living in. But through technology, we're opening a new aspects of the human experience, that is the landscape of the mind. The idea that we can see both will physically travel, but they will also mentally travel. And you can think through a movie, for instance, you can be sitting in your living room watching a movie, but the movie will carry you through emotional, will make you laugh, will make you cry, will make you dance. And this whole other dimension we can't see, but that now through technology, we can now measure and document and report. This is the vision that we're trying to implement, is to develop this knowledge. We actually have a name for it. We call it the mindscape. So the landscape of the mind, the mindscape. And our challenge is to document it, explain beyond the physical sense, where are the human traveling with their mind. And it's obviously a very exciting venture, and we're getting started. We have already quite a bit of data, so we have a good understanding of several aspects, and our challenge is now to really document as many experiences as possible, just to get a grasp of this world that is invisible, but yet basically define what is the human experience.
Yeah, that's a beautiful idea, the landscape of the mind to capture it. And of course, each individual has their own landscape of the mind. Yes, and we live in it all the time, but just nobody knows about it. Maybe there will be opportunity for us to share those landscapes of the mind with each other, which might help us connect and understand each other better. What do you think about that?
I can already tell you that not only we can anticipate it, it's already happening for us. As you put it nicely, we all have an individual experience that we live, and our mind is our secret garden. Everybody sense emotions, everybody feels something somehow, and we like to discuss about it. And we find, I think this is what explains why people have so much interest for what we're doing, is that suddenly we open a new channel of communication where you can actually show your feelings. Whereas before you had to explain it, but there was always this sense of disconnection between what you felt and how you were explaining it. And now we're building maps. You go and you have moments where you have individual experience when you're on your own, when you live and you have your own uniqueness about how you feel things. But then also there's points of connections when multiple people join together for a show. Suddenly they get tuned into the same experience. So this really opens a nice way to discuss a new, oh, I felt this, oh, you felt that, oh, that. No, so now you can share much more. Talking about emotions, depending on who you are, depending on the culture, the people you're with, discussing emotion can be a little bit tricky because you don't know how people will understand it. Sometimes there's disparity. Now that we're measuring, I believe it makes it easier. And it did for me, at least. It gives you a better understanding of yourself. Your emotions are, we have a level where we live emotions, but when you measure them, suddenly you can see it as a signal. So you can use it to understand yourself better. Okay. For instance, anger, which is generally a negative emotion. Once you start to understand what anger is and how you express it, now you can use this not as something that you live and project, but rather as something that you interpret. Say, oh, now I'm angry. So why am I angry? What can I do about it? So it helps to understand human interactions and to, without canceling the need to feel emotions, it makes you rationalize a few elements of emotional, and then you can use this to better communicate and better understand your relationship with the others, and try to use this to obviously for to have a better connection with the other people. So this, I think, is something that opened the way to see how diverse the experiences are. I think it can open. We're not there yet, but to show that there's a reason why some people like, let's say, a hockey game versus why some people like to go to a museum, and show them together and say, look, there's a reason why you prefer this, and there's no reason to not accept that someone else likes something else. So I think it really brings this sense. If we can help through this understanding, people accept each other better, accept the differences. I think this is a mission that we can all win through this. So it's a little bit abstract, but this is the general idea around what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a possibility to understand yourself better as well. Many people, when trying this emotional work, they have troubles labeling their own emotions. So when there is something and you ask, for example, as a coach, I ask, what do you feel when you're saying this, or when there is this situation? People often cannot even say what's going on inside. There are studies that are saying that even just simply labeling the emotion, it already can help with the dealing with them. So, how your approach might be helpful for learning your own emotions and learning to label them.
Totally, and I think labeling, understanding them. The other aspect is sometimes sometimes not that we forget, but I think we all have this sense sometimes of living. I call it living at the first degree. That is, you don't have a outside perspective on your life. You're kind of like just in the tunnel. No, you get the tunnel vision. You sit with some people. I use anger as an example, but it can happen with any emotions. Sometimes people get so much into like the right here, right now, maybe hypnotized, but maybe not, but just the image of suddenly I don't think about what I'm doing, but I'm just living it. Now having the data and having a report that comes after the fact can help you to backtrack and say, oh, this is what happened at that moment. No, when I was living it, I was not in a position to understand it because maybe the intensity, the chaos was too much. But now, after the fact, I can take a moment to think back about what happened and use this such that to get a better control of myself in the future. I use anger. I think anger is this, but obviously the same thing can be applied to positive emotions. Joy is always something that we try to bring forward to understand what makes me happy, which people makes me happier, realize where the locations also, there's a location will induce some emotional states. We often discuss with architects and urbanists, and they say, how can we build some cities or some locations in the cities such that people feel better instead of being stressed because they walk to work. Now, if you add a park, if you add something, it eases down the pressure and people can just, suddenly they're happier simply because the site was induced a different state of mind. I don't want to make it sound like we control emotion, but rather we act on people's state of mind. People can understand it and maybe even use this better to calm themselves and get a better attitude. But I think understanding emotions is definitely a great way to be better human.
Yeah, absolutely. So, from what I understood, that not only can we look at our emotions in a real time, but we can go back because we have a recording and see what happened to us before in the state when we were not really conscious about how we feel. Yes, we were in a moment, we were busy with other things. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, exactly. But this is one of the application when we work in marketing research. This is what comes on top. It is people will enjoy a show, enjoy a movie. Will so they're not in a state of mind to analyze their state of mind. And after the activity, then they can report. Obviously, I mean we can ask them through focus group, but we often find that there are some gaps in what they can remember or what they will talk about. There's some bias as well, such as often what happens during the later stage of a show will be better remembered. Now we get the complete picture. And one comment I had, we did some work with immersive experience, and when we showed the results to the participants, suddenly it gives them a different perspective. It brings the experience that they felt to their attention, and suddenly they can rethink the experience they live and reappreciate it a second time. And this I find is a great contribution because now we're not just living the moment, but we're reliving the moment a second time when we actually look at the results and discuss what happened and all. And this is a great possibility offered by this type of technology. Be able to look back and reappreciate a second time something that we live and maybe understand it better. Also, there's the work of the people. Where I like to put forward the work of experience creator. Is they made a movie. Sometimes we're quick in the way we report the quality of a movie, but then when you see the data, you can see, oh, this is the choice that were made by director to bring this apex of emotion and opens the way to understand better the crafting of experiences. And this, I know that for many people, it's a great interest to discuss not just emotions, but how emotions were crafted, the experience was crafted to make it happen. And suddenly we open this new discussion instead of just living the experience. Now we can open the discussion about how it was created.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. I was always mesmerized with that, how the film directors, yes, are creating those moments, which, in reality, they don't exist, but it makes it real for us, and we're experiencing all that, how this magic happens. And you're delving right into the core of that, which is absolutely amazing. I also very much liked your comment on utilizing these approaches together with architects to make people feel better in the environments they live in. We had one amazing podcast with the architect and PhD candidate Ali Heshmati, who is an architect interested in neuroscience, who is using neuroscience information for creating spaces. So I think you would have very interesting intersection between each other to discuss this topic.
I'll share with you a confidence. The term, the word mindscape. So the landscape of that, I was discussing initially of the landscape of the mind. So this idea came from the technology there. But the word mindscape actually is a friend of mine who is an architect that came to visit our office and look at what we're doing. I say, oh yeah, we're trying to map the landscape of the mind, and spontaneously say, oh, mindscape. And I say, oh, that's a great word you're using now. So we didn't have at the moment had the chance to work with architects. There's a professor, a prophet in Toronto. His name is, I would have to look it up. He wrote a book where he explains how locations affects the state of mind. And this, even though we haven't worked with an architect, the way they think, the way they is an inspiration for what we do ourselves.
Yeah.
Working with architects has definitely brought the concept into a much more, and now I'm carrying this vision, but it was heavily influenced by the work of architects and urbanists that I had a chance to talk. I just Googled it. The name of the neuroscientist is Colin Laird, and you should look it up. Did amazing work. I think, as far as I know, he's the first one that walked in the city with the sensing skin conductivity, and he was wearing a EEG headset 10 years ago. So to put it in context, so Colin Laird.
Yes, thank you. That's such an amazing conversation, Frederick. Now, let's get a little bit back in history. So, here is the growing Frederick. And at what point Frederick started to get interested in technologies, and how did he come to that point that he decided to work with emotions? Uh, how did all that develop?
How I got into this, it happened very organically. Surprisingly, I come from a background in engineering first. I ended up as a PhD student in neurophysiology with invasive BCI back then with Utah Arrays. So we were working on neural prosthetics at McGill. So this, I spent a few years there. And then I started my first company, which doesn't exist anymore, Atlas Embedded, where we were, let's put it, we were biohackers. So we were the EEG, that's back in 2015. And people were starting to hack with, we had the Muse back then by Teraxon. We had the NeuroSky. We had OpenBCI. The board was just coming out. It's a different time, but we were a bunch of people with studies in the field of cognitive science or neuroscience. And we saw that this technology was definitely underused compared to the potential that this technology had to have an impact on the world. So we all kind of saw the opportunity, but nobody could really find, besides monitoring focus or meditation, there was no real application yet on a wider perspective. At some point, I couldn't point exactly where, but within the company, we started to ask ourselves about potential market in video games. And EEG gives you very good metrics of cognitive engagement, if you're in the flow, cognitive load, motivation. So all these metrics are pretty good with EEG. And you start to look at what else is out there. Now that we have a good understanding of what can be done with brainwaves, what else is out there? And just by Googling, we find, facial expressions express a more emotional side of things. Skin conductance gives you a great measure of arousal. The heart dynamics as well, that is both extremely much more variable than I thought initially, that the heart rate varies with pretty much everything. Then HRV gives you a great sense of stress or well-being. All this came up just as the first business idea was really to build a product that takes all of these signals, all the low-hanging fruit, and make a multimodal system that is easy to use, that can potentially be used by even people who don't have a background. So to really bring, both in terms of being easy to use, providing reliable metrics, and this is how it came to be. It wasn't, at this point, I will even admit that the vision of the Mindscape wasn't even born back then. I can tell you why it came to be, though. So we built the first product. which was called the Nucleus-Hermès, which was, we called it a lab in a box. Basically, it's a multimodal system that was fitting in a suitcase, a very small suitcase. So you could just deploy it anywhere, anytime. So you could go on a site, install it in maybe 15 minutes, and then you could start to record multimodal data. For that, you needed like expensive equipment. It was also quite accessible. The first feedback we got from the video game industry was that, oh, your device measure emotion, that's great, but I have no experts in-house to interpret this data. So this is when we had the clash with the market to realize that, yes, we can measure, but people don't know what to do with these measurements. Okay, so this was the first, or at least one of the first negative feedback we had about our vision to bring multimodal data to user experience evaluation in video games back then. And through this, I started thinking about, okay, how do we solve this issue of making the data easier to interpret? And then it didn't happen in one day. It took a few weeks / months to dig into the idea. I have a background in AI, so the idea of suddenly to build a model. So instead of measuring emotional states and cognitive states, I built the concept of doing another step of non-supervised analysis. So to basically use, if you're familiar with principal component analysis, ICA, vector analysis. Now, what if we run these algorithms on top of emotional and cognitive states? Usually they're used to decompose EEG, let's say eye blinks or artifacts. But what if you run these dimensionality reduction combined with some clustering on the actual emotional and cognitive data? What will happen? And from the data we had back then, we already saw that there seemed to be some states that emerge, some discrete states that emerge from when you combine all the information. For instance, engagement and arousal. Generally, when you have lots of engagement, arousal would tend to go down. When engagement is high, often emotional goes a little bit lower because people get into like a poker face, I call it. So this was the hunch. So my background, like I said, was in AI. So when you understand these algorithms, the way they project into a hyperspace or into a lower dimensionality and then clustering, well, this vision of a mindscape emerged. And then all the dots were connected. Now there's a few hypotheses that I just saw that were proven wrong, like the idea of discrete states didn't show up in the data at the end of the day. So there's no discrete states, but we do discretize the mental states. But when you think in terms of landscape, because this is how they picture a higher dimensional space. When I was studying AI, they say, oh, genetic algorithms, you look for a local minima. Think of it of mountains, that you find the highest mountains in a region. So this idea of mindscape, landscape comes from AI. Now applied to emotional and cognitive states, suddenly you have this landscape that emerges in the way you think the data. And when everything connected, you say, oh, so we have a landscape that we can explore with these regions. And at some point, you think this needs to be a finite state. That is, it's not infinite. Our data go from this number to this number. We have this many data, so we can potentially explore the whole space and map the whole thing. And then at some point, you just become passionate about what you're doing. It's not so much that you want to do something. It's rather you start to do stuff, you assemble, you solve challenge. And at some point, you're just in it and you say, hey, I want to do it. I want to explore. And at some point, it becomes your dream, basically. It's not so much that I choose this dream. It's rather that I ended up at the place where this seemed like the natural way to push my scientific interest. So that explains how it happened. Like I said, it's a little bit abstract, it's a little bit vague, but today I embody this dream quite well, and we're looking forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very, very inspiring story how you started and how it developed. You said that you worked with intracranial recordings, with brain implants. That is very sophisticated type of research. Yes, it's really groundbreaking. And for some reason, you decide, I want to do something on my own. I want to start my own company, establish my own product. And it's unknown. You are going basically into unknown versus something very sophisticated, established, still with unknowns, but with a very clear ground. Why you made that choice? What drove you to do your own thing?
So I was working in a lab between 2010 and 2014-ish, okay, to give you an idea. In brain implants, we were working with for neuroprosthetics. Our implant was located in the parietal reach region. That is called, basically, it's the area that encodes your motor plan. So I show you a target that you want to reach with your hand, and you need to, it's a motor imagery, but just in a more sophisticated fashion. And this, even back then, which is 10 years ago, it works surprisingly well. I mean, not surprisingly, it works very well. Able to decode to single trial with a high level of accuracy where you want to execute your reach movements worked very well. We were also seeing great plasticity taking place to actually adapt with the implant. The greatest limit, I would say, that was quite discussed back then about, but there's two main. First, to get an implant require surgery, quite risky surgery. So this was one barrier to this technology becoming widely adopted. And the other one that is still not very much discussed is that implants have a rather short lifespan in the brain, because beyond simply the implant breaking for any reason, electronics or contacts, the brain will either eject the implant over time through, I think they call it biopressure. So simply the tissue will try to push it out, or it will surround it by scar tissue. So the implants were generally lasting, if you were lucky, you could go 2-3 years, but generally within 2 years, these signals were already starting to degrade. Although this science is very promising, this obviously instrumenting the brain is something that can bring back a great quality of life to many people who are suffering from medical conditions. There's the Matrix picture where in the future we could even use it if it's safe. There's two movies. There's the Matrix, and the other one is Existence. I don't know if you've seen it, where people, they do like Existence is use a biomodule to it's the same as the same concept as the Matrix, but they go into like virtual reality, but no, like a true virtual reality with all sense through a biomodule, so Existence. So this in the future maybe, but this is so far at this point, it's not practical to think about it. But the point is that this technology, even though it has a lots of potential and can bring great benefits to many people, it's definitely not something that can have a wide impact simply because the barrier to adoption is out there. In contrast, again, I mean, a life is your life choice are often a sum of the people you meet. And when I decided to start a business, so this was even before I started the PhD, the idea was eventually to go into the business. Well, I come from engineering. I'm a very practical person. I like to build stuff. I like to see things happen. Science was a great place to learn. The academia was a great place to learn, but at some point I felt that I was missing the sense of action. I think academia has its place in the whole thing, so I'm not mounting it, but for me, I needed at some point to say, okay, I've learned enough, time to do stuff. So I started a business, but at first I wasn't even going into brain computer interface, even though I had a background that suggested it strongly. When I started my first business, the idea was to go back to the root of, I was working when I was an undergrad on embedded artificial intelligence. So the idea to do artificial intelligence, but in device. So then we would call it edge computing, basically. So when you want to do AI, you don't have an internet access. So the challenge is to bring AI tools into a smaller device so that you can use it in a more flexible way. So when I quit the PhD, the first goal was to go back into this. I had built some projects as an undergrad, but then I met guys from Neurotech-X. I don't know if you heard of this organization. So I met the guys of Neurotech-X, the founders of Neurotech-X, before it was even called Neurotech-X. Back then, they called it BCI Montreal. When I met them, they started a project a month before we met. So it was, and the guy was Yannick Roy. His name, I mean, many people would know Yannick Roy. He had so much impact, I mean, on the whole awareness about brain-computer interface in the whole world. And I saw these guys that were working with EEG, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't knew at that point that EEG had customer device that were collecting EEG. And as an entrepreneur, I look into it and I say, oh, there's definitely something happening, because you have a few customer device, but not yet the societal impact of this technology. So as an innovator, I started to hang with these guys and just to try to say, oh, what can be done? And given that I had a background in neuroscience, I was not working with EEG, but I was working within brain implants. So, I mean, it was a quick transfer of knowledge to apply this knowledge to EEG. And this is how it started. And at some point you say, this is where I am. So let's just push forward and try to do as much as we can through in this field. And that's basically how it happens. I kind of missed the initial question, but this is where the drive comes from. And I'm someone who lives a passion. So basically, I mean, at some point, it's not so much the why, but it's just like, this is what I'm doing. So let's just do as much as I can in this field. I still feel very lucky to have the chance to be able to live from this activity. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you totally answered the question. The next question is about the affective BCIs. Yes, BCIs that can measure emotions, evaluate them. And this usually was the hardest topic among all BCIs. If you ask people emotional BCI, oh no, we are not doing it. It's too hard to really objectively evaluate the emotion. So you took the hardest part and you made it happen. So can you maybe elaborate more to our listeners just to give them a perspective of why this outlook on affective BCIs, what are the main problems, and what did you do to actually solve those problems? What was that integral component of what you did that made the change?
It's very funny what you're saying because this was my exact same reaction. Okay. I started a business with, he's not with the business anymore, but with a partner initially. He's the one who said, hey, we should, he was a neophyte. He wasn't in the technology space at all. So when I explained what we can do, at large, he really stick to, we need to measure emotions. And my first reaction was like, I don't want to do this. I mean, this is way too complicated. I don't want to, don't you like these other ideas? I mean, we could do, I was doing SSVP to do user interface. I was doing a few other things. And he said, no, I want us to do emotions. And my first reaction was exactly that, but this is so hard. I mean, why are we even trying to build this? Then I said, okay, let's the challenge. I mean, at this point, you break it down. You say, what are emotions? That's the first thing that you start with. That is, what are emotions? And then this also explains why we're multimodal. We're multimodal since 2018. I started with EEG. I hacked only with EEG for at least a good 3 years. Then it's when the problem of emotions arose. I haven't done it myself, but apparently that you can get some sense of emotional metrics using EEG. But then you need high density systems, and you're likely to need electrodes to get good signal. And this was getting in conflict with our goal of having a system that is easy to use, quick setup, less than 2 minutes. So we were really into the space of being extremely efficient. So the idea of having wet electrodes was definitely a no-go. The idea of having a high density headset was something that accounts to this approach. But then I got interested into facial expressions because this is, if you look for emotions, the first thing you stumble on is facial expressions. At first, I even say I'm guilty. This is something that I had to debate a few times during the adventure. Often neuroscientists don't believe in facial expressions. And this was even more true, I would say, 5 years ago. So when I was telling neuroscientists, oh yeah, we analyze facial expressions, they say, oh no, that's not true. That doesn't work. When you start to work with them, you see that they work. One, and the second thing you realize is that, okay, if you try to do everything with EEG, there's a few things that are easy, but you have other things that are hard to do. If you work with facial expressions, it's super easy. I mean, very quickly, we could find a few algorithms that were published open source. Some aspects, not always very good, but they're good facial expressions. And this, when you look at all the signals that are available, and you realize that each one of them is complementary. And each one of them do pretty much everything. At least if we give it the benefit of the doubt, each signal can do everything, but each signal has some low-hanging fruit. Okay, so facial expressions is the best signal to get facial emotional reactions. EEG is the best to get the basic of cognitive metrics, flow, cognitive load, motivation. So EEG get that, facial expressions get that. The heart is a trickier one because the heart rate is so variable. You look into scientific publications and tells you, oh, heart rate reacts to emotional states. Practice, everything affects heart rate. You stand up or your heart rate increase. You go to a restaurant, heart rate increase before the food comes because you have your gas that gets activated. So heart rate is very hard to work with in my at least in my personal experience. It's a great metric for metabolism. Great metric for metabolism. But then you have HRV. Heart rate variability is a great metric to give state of stress. No, so it's I call it a slow metric. So it doesn't move as fast as emotional reactions. On a slower pace, it gives you a great metric of the state of mind of people in terms of the well-being or the stress. So when you combine them together, the idea is we sample more signals, but we take the low-hanging fruit of what each signal has the best to offer. And then the idea is to bring all together into a coherent system. And then slowly, and this is one of the first things we've noticed is this, that part of the story is told by EEG. When EEG stops engagement, goes lower. Now you look at emotional states, and emotional states picks up and tells you the other part of the story. So the story of the full experience is jumping from one modality to the other. There's a few other signals I wish I could sample. I mean, I think respiration rate, I believe, I've read a few things that it seems like it's a pretty good signal to capture. You have oxygen, you have NIRS, you have so there's many other signals. But for now, I mean, we had to stop somewhere at least to make a selection. So we went for those that were at this point the one that make the most sense, but always under the constraints of having a system that is easy to use. This is the most priority, a system that is easy to use, that can be used anywhere, anytime. So this is the spirit of constraint we try to work with.
Yes. So you pointed out a very important moment, I think, and I will provide example. I worked for a long time in epilepsy surgery. And for that, there is a very thorough evaluation before the surgery. We take different imaging modalities, EEG, ECOG, MEG, PET, SPECT, fMRI, you name it, plus different neuropsychological evaluations and the symptoms and whatnot. The problem is to really make a story of combining them all, telling a story what's actually is going on, where is the seizure localized, and how this can help us to do the surgery. So here you also have all those signals that each of them tells some part of the story. So how did you make it possible to create a whole story out of that? What did you use? How did you solve this problem?
Just make one quick analogy. It's the same thing with I like to compare our field with astrophysics. That is, when they deploy a satellite, they'll have one that does the visual, the visible aspect. Then they need another one for X-rays. They need another one, and it's when you combine all of them together that you get a true picture of what's going on in the universe. And now we have like the gravitational wave now that can be sampled to go even further. So it's just like I find that this is a great analogy for what we're doing. So how do we solve it? It took a long time to get everything together. So in a few places, engagement, just to take one, well, engagement, we use an index. It's the engagement index that has been demonstrated initially, I think, by NASA in the 60s. And it's an analytical solution. It's a ratio of power bands. So you see, so this one was easy. So this, and it's very reliable. It's my go-to signal to start the stories, to look at engagement, because it tells you a lot. And it's correlated with satisfaction as well from when they do the focus group after. This one was easy. And then the hardest one, I would say, probably, I guess, cognitive load. Cognitive load, even in the new product, I have it in my first product, but in the new product, we haven't done it yet. So cognitive load, you do have some correlates in the power bands, but you want a scale that is relatable. So this is where the challenge happens. So you want to be able to tell not just a number, but is it a high cognitive load or a low one? And what I like here is that it also involves experiment design. And this is something that sometimes is undervalued in our field. People comes with psychology background. If you want to build a model, a machine learning model that can detect cognitive load out of EEG signal, you need a good experiment to simulate these states of mind. So I have a psychologist on the team. He is responsible for designing the experiment. We obviously do the scientific approach. So we go through a literature review, we build an experiment. So everything, that the whole academia process, everything comes into play to build such an experiment. Then we kick in with machine learning and build a population model. We record for 30, 60 people to get a sense that we get something that is predictive enough, with enough predictive power. So now I think I answered the question for two extremes in the field of cognitive metrics. Now I think you want to hear it for emotional states. So emotional states, I think my thinking go further, but I'll take you like at the beginning. So in terms of emotional states, the state of the art is really to find what is called the facial action coding system. So it has its own wiki page that goes so FACS, so facial action coding system. And the work in that field comes from, I hope I'm not getting it wrong, but I think the Prof. Alckmin, I think it was Paul Alckmin, in the 70s, 60s, 70s, he traveled the world with pictures of people expressing different faces. And he asked people to label them, say, what is this person expressing? And what came out of this is a set of basis expressions. I insist on the word basis here. And so we have the basic expressions are smiling. Okay, you see someone smiling, you know it conveys joy, or at least is laughing. Or so you have smiling, you have neutral, obviously, you have anger, which is carried by the frown. You have surprise. Okay, I'm pretty good at that. By the way, you have sadness. Sadness is a little bit tougher. You have fear, contempt, which is the corner smile, asymmetric smile, and probably missing one. Disgust. Disgust is very useful because we have a client who works with the olfactory experiences. And this is where we saw disgust first. No, people were smelling something and, oh, it's disgusting. So it's true, though. So these are the basis expressions. And now I've learned to present them this way. It's a little bit like the basis colors. When we speak of colors, you have red, green, and blue, at least for light colors. And basically, these expressions are like that. So you have some mix that arise in your data. So basically, it was just to build a system that is able to recognize these different expressions. Okay. And the way we did it was simply to, I call it mimicked expressions. Once you understand the physiology of these expressions, the first thing you notice is when you look at the facial action coding system, you find that there are specific muscles associated with these expressions. Now, and we're measuring muscle activity, facial muscle activity. So you see the link here. So you have specific muscles that are associated with each of these facial expressions. Through our work, we've noticed when these expressions are expressed. So that's the other thing. So this came more from experience rather than lab settings. And then it's to build machine learning. So our process is to ask people to make the expressions. So I call them mimic expressions. So I guide them into expressing the right expressions. So generally there's a practice session. So I work with them to really show which muscle should be activated and then they mimic the expression, we record it. So that is machine learning that comes in to associate the signals with the right expressions. And currently our system uses mimicked expressions. So it's trained on, we call mimic, I think it's better, but we could also call them artificial expressions. But where we're going, and this is part of our activities, is to collect data, because mimic expression is an MVP. So it gives you the minimum functionality of being able to categorize expressions. But now what we're working for is to collect data in natural settings to eventually train the algorithm not on mimic expressions, but on evoked expressions where people were not instructed into making the different faces. And this, I think, is the right time to talk about the Mindscape Emotion project, which is the book I'm writing. I hope to finish it by the end of the year. So it's a book that basically like these evoke expressions. We went into entertainment, but we have kind of like it's a marketing, I call it experiential marketing stunt, because all the people that opened their door so that we can capture experience are all featured in the book. So for them, it's a marketing activity. For us, it's an opportunity to see, so where can I measure smiling, like true smiling, for instance? Well, we recorded people attending a comedy show. So you see, so now you have true smiling. We went to a relaxation forest. So people go to relax in a forest settings. So this is meant to be relaxing. We went to a museum where we were blessed by luck there, because the museum we went to had a exposition called, the museum is Musée de la Civilisation, which is in Quebec City. And they had an exposition called Oh Shit. And it was an exposition on the thematic, the theme of shit. So you had toilets, you had like anything you can imagine, and you even had others that were presented where you could smell, and we did find some. So we find through our mimic expression, we find the expression of disgust that was present at various places of the exposition. Next month we go to Maleficia, which is a horror house. Okay, I'm really looking forward to this experience, because I pitch it this way: we're going to measure genuine fear Okay, so in real settings, fear, disgust coming from the gore. It's not my type of entertainment, but for science, I will go and I will go through. So each of these chapters that become chapters in the books, they all try to go into a different emotion, with the goal of creating a database of indeed evoke expressions that we can then train further the algorithms on this. So now you see, so now, because I don't think a genuine fear can ever be expressed, or at least it would be hard to do in a lab. But this is why we built the business around this marketing stunt, be able to have a win-win situations where people, we go to them, we say, look, this is a product, we're building an innovation, you want to be featured in the book, so it's a win-win situation. And us, we get the data to first, I mean, even mimicked expressions works quite well, actually. So it's not so much that it doesn't work and now it needs to work, it's that it works well, but we want them to be even better. And we want also to get them to get maybe the finer details, also mix of emotions that can arise. I know at the museum, we had like a mix of joy and disgust that was happening. So happily discussed, where people smile while being discussed. So we get these combination and maybe we will find new emotions as well, new expressions that will arise from, I always thought The Rock Johnson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, when he does this asymmetric eyebrows, that can be sometimes assigned to confusion. So this is not documented in scientific literature, and maybe we'll find new expressions. At the end of the day, the dream is to have enough data, to do a little bit like they do with ChatGPT, and to basically launch a non-supervised algorithm to make sense of the data, instead of us taking the time to assign label. That's a little bit of like, dream is, why do we assign labels when we have the data? What if at one point we launch a non-supervised method that will tell us actually what is in the data? We are already doing it. So when we analyze the data, we already combine the data into a state of minds that can be a mix of engagement and joy and stuff like that. But eventually the goal at some point is really to not assign any label and just let the statistics tell us what basically describe the landscape of the mind. So but in between, we have a system that is quite good. I mean, the results we get, I mean, I like to put it to people, we're not at the stage of does it work or does it not work? No, it works. This is well established. A few years ago, we established that it works. Now we're more into doing it better and doing it more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by your creativity and approach to using all those amazing opportunities, very unexpected sometimes, to test your product and collect the data in this very organically, yes, without certain paradigms, strict lab conditions. And I think that's the key of the development that should happen. And we have some knowledge of that. I again remember epilepsy surgery, that initially we would record ECOG data for functional mapping by presenting certain pictures. Please name this, yes, to evaluate language. Please listen to this, receptive language, yes. And now there are approaches when we can just record the data with the video during natural tasks. The person is listening or talking or using their hand. We can also correlate that activity, EEG, ECOG activity, with video recording and see in natural settings what's happening, what's going on. So I so much like this innovative new ways of doing things.
If I'm not mistaken, it was Dr. Penfield in Montreal that kind of like, probably not the only one, but that started the work with the epileptic patient to map functional aspects of the brains. And I think this exploration, I don't want to say anything against it, but I think that this explorative approach to just say, let's do it and see what happens. I'll be honest with you, I think you need a business to be able to conduct this. Academia is a little bit more strict in terms of how science can be done, which is not bad. There's a reason for this and there's a motivation behind this, which is very pertinent. But great thing with the business, now I roll back why a business and why not being in academia, is that no, I mean, as a business, we find it much easier to go through just, hey, let's just this weekend, let's go to a horror house and we can do it. In academia, it's 6-9 months of preparation to go there. So it kind of opens a little bit this sense of exploration and be spontaneous. And the end goal at some point is to come back with a solid framework, discuss this data to explain it. And but at this point, it's just about collecting all the data before we can start to form patterns and understand what's going on. But we're really in the core of it. There's already many patterns that we start to recognize, like the phase of onboarding and experience. We see it very well. There's a phase where they start to disconnect from the experience before the end. And when you're watching a movie and you start to think about what you're going to do after, we see it. So there's different things, but we're building basically a framework that we'll use to later on even better at what we're doing.
Absolutely. And are you also collecting video recordings while you are measuring all the physiological activity and then correlate and use one to inform other? How does it usually work when you measure it in those various settings?
So this rolls back actually why we're using facial EMG today. And that's an interesting thing because the first product was a sitting station for video games. So we had the camera. So we were using the camera initially to pick up facial expressions. And the first was video games. Then we did movie analysis as well. So we use an infrared camera that we were setting up in a space. But the first thing that really challenged me, I was asked in 2019 to collect experience in a store, in a very small boutique. Okay, so a small boutique. It was a scenario, so people were entering and they were following a path, a predetermined path. And back then we had the system that was with cameras, but it was flexible enough that I could attach multiple cameras and synchronize everything. For a very simple path, it took me 16 cameras, and I had so much issues with lighting conditions that were varying during the day. Just the angle of the face will affect the results. So some people, depending on the face of the person, it can be better or worse, but some people have just the corner of the mouth, which is a landmark that is used. Well, if you look like this, they look sad. If you look like this, they look smiling. So when I did the store experience, this is when it struck me that our solution was limited in terms of its flexibility. And this was always part of it, and be as flexible as possible. The first thing I started to think, when you have a hammer, you think every problem has a nail. So the first was, okay, which kind of cameras can be used to track people? Oh, what if we have because cameras, you have the focus, you have the zoom, you have lighting conditions. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually pretty good in camera engineering following this period of time. So, okay, what if you have a camera with a PZT, so a pan tilt zoom that you track people? Then I say, okay, what if I need to do a Walmart then? No, just sure a larger space. What if turn and now they look at the tablets? And at some point I said, this is insane. I mean, I'm going to have to put cameras everywhere in the world before get the quality of data that I want to get. And this is when I started to think from backward. And then also I needed to go on site the cameras, so instrument the site, which was extremely time consuming. So from a business perspective, it was inefficient to instrument the site, and the bigger, the more complex it is. And we already had EEG that was wearable. We were using a Muse back then. So the EEG was wearable. The wristband is the shimmer that measures skin conductance and heart rate was wearable. So the only element that was not wearable at this point was the camera. And then, I mean, obviously, we come from neurophysiology or at least physiology. And I want to say, look, facial action coding system is built on the muscles that are activated with each face expressions. And measuring the amplitude of EMG is an order of magnitude above EEG. It's generally an artifact in EEG. So it's actually easy to sample. And so I want to say, if instead of instrumenting the site, bring everything onto the person and instrument the person, and suddenly you think of it, you say, now I can send the person anywhere, and it works. You can send them. I often use a forest as a illustration. Forest, there's no electricity. You cannot bring cameras, so you just instrument the person, and suddenly you can go anywhere, anytime, and it works. And this is what the idea is of building a system that is fully wearable. Combined to this, I also that was in 2019. I had built a EEG VR headset in 2017. I envisioned that there were several companies working on combining EEG and VR. It's a natural extension of the system. And then I kind of forced out, what's the next step after that? oh, it's the glasses, the smart glasses, which today is like extremely has been validated. But in 2019, I say I'm gonna position myself to be ready to when the smart glasses comes out. So this constraint where we could instrument on the body, all the signals we need are available around the glasses form factor. And there you go, 2020. I start to pitch to find investors, and guess what? COVID happens, and I found myself in a pitch meeting trying to pitch a technology to help improve experience in retail while everything behind me is closing, everybody's panicking, and then the investors and even me, I was like, look, I'm pitching this, but today it makes no sense. So the project was put on the back burner for a few years, and it surprisingly caught up. I really have to thank my partners and clients who were all affected by the pandemic, because we were, at this point, we were less in video games and more in customer experience, and themselves also were heavily affected by this. But at the same time, the thing that happened is that the field of customer experience through COVID became, before it was a nice to have, and suddenly it became like extremely popular. People were discussing when you have to go to a store and you have to face the mask, you have to clean your hands, you have to do a waiting line. So what is customer experience? You had it in your also, so this whole field kind of became very popular. So all my clients very quickly they find, hey, I found an opportunity. At first, we're doing tests, and you see how things sometimes is just random. But I had an opportunity, so I had the opportunity to build a headset. So that happened at some point, and the first deployment of the headset actually happened at Palais des Congrès, which is event space, and people were still wearing masks, but because we were sensing muscle activity, it was a no issue. And you see, like, so people, if we had been camera based, we couldn't measure emotions. But now that we had the chance to test our system, and then I mean things have been moving forward since. Obviously, I mean anybody who's in the field of BCI would tell you it's not an easy business. I mean, I met an entrepreneur who started after me, who are now like 20, 30 employees, and about to become a unicorn, but so it's not a field that is easy. It's a field of passion, but the response of people towards our project has been surprisingly, people are genuinely interested in what we're doing. And this is still struck me. At first, it was very B2B relationships. Now we're definitely thinking about the B2C, because people are interested in the emotions and getting the data, understanding the experience that they're doing. So when we do an activation, when we say the headset will be at this location on this date, within a few hours, all the places are booked. People want to try the system. People, since the pandemic, I found that people are seeking these new entertainment activities. I think they're both more selective because they want live things now much bigger. No, we were all affected by that. Of staying home, and now we kind of like start from this element of being part of it's not our mission first, but it's just that the vibe is about living things. And I think there's also a lot of software, movies, and also when you have something that is physical, people can wear, it has a special vibe with people. Even me, I know it is. I can't explain exactly why, but I know there's definitely a link. There's something we're doing that is really connecting with people.
Yes. Can you give an example of such event? How many sets people are wearing? How they're working? Is it just they're free, they go where they want, or there is, some special way? So guide us through of an event. Yes, if one of our listeners would be at the event, what he or she would see?
So the system was always meant to be easy to use. So this is the first system we had the vision. It's a one button interface. Okay, so that was really about it. So people show up. So generally it's organized, but we have some people that spontaneously, when we have cancellation, people will who were going to the event will spontaneously say, "Hey, I want to try it." So people come, we do the instrumentation. So the product is not for sale. I mean, because we're getting there. Next year, I expect that we'll be ready. But currently, we generally show up with 6 headsets. So it's 6 at a time. And people show up within, so instrumenting 6 people roughly takes, with the pitch and just like to make it casual as well, it takes about 15 minutes. So it's super quick to instrument everyone. The system is fully wearable. So you have the headset, you have the wristband. You have a banana bag that contains a computer that connects everything and collects the data. And then after 15 minutes, people are good to go, can just explore. We have a GPS location with the system. And we also have an indoor positioning system. So if we're indoor, GPS doesn't work. So then we put antennas or on system and triangulate people's position. When you look at pictures, the headset is obviously apparent. It's built, by the way, so that you can wear it with glasses. So it was meant to be a pair of glasses, but then eventually I say, oh, but for people who have glasses, we kind of built around the frame. And people comment that I get is after 2 minutes, they forget they're wearing it. So even though if you look at pictures, it's apparent, obviously, but people tend to forget it's super comfortable. When you wear it, you don't have the sense that you're wearing, you don't see it, or a little bit at the top, but you don't see it when you wear it. It doesn't obstruct your vision. In terms of comfort, this is obviously something that day one, we say it needs to be comfortable. I'm not saying we didn't nail it initially. We had a few points that we have to work with, but now it's super comfortable, so we can wear it. I'd say after 2 hours, people start to complain a little bit when there's a tension point, but beyond that, I mean, people find it very comfortable. So and then they just enjoy the experience, and they go through the experience, whatever it is. It can be. We did circus, we did, like I said, museum. Now we're doing a comedy show. We had our theater. We're doing in December, our house. Our house might be a little bit more challenging because there's some interactions with the actors, but we'll see what happens. And when they finish the experiment, so to start the recording is a one button interface. So we kept that. So once the people have it, you press the button, it records, you press the button again, it stops recording. So it's super easy. At the end of the experience, they remove the equipment. Now everything is in the cloud. All the algorithms that process the data is all in the cloud. So as soon as the device finds a Wi-Fi, it will transfer all the data in the database. Then we have all the analytics that kicks in. So all the data is first we extract the matrix, cognitive emotional matrix. And then we have what I call recipes, which depending on the type of experience, will take the data and either form an experiential map. So if you want to project the emotion out in space, as I call it experiential map, or if you want to put them in time, and it's a chronological map. And then everything happens automatically in the best of all. Well, now more realistically, there's a few hiccups that happens, then we go manually and we arrange the data. The goal is we bet on automation. Our goal is that everything becomes more and more automated. And generally after an experience, so we don't do much into individual results yet because it's much harder to be very precise about one person. But we try to collect at least 20, 25 people per experience. So it gives us a good sample. Tendencies tend to emerge after as soon as 10 people, we get good tendencies, but then we get more statistical validity when we increase the number. And then we try to satisfy the people, the participants. We try within a week to come out at least with what I call a macro report, which is a document that explains what they live, that explains also, I bring the experience creator with an interview to show, basically we retell the experience that they live with more details and interpretation of their feelings and all. And this is basically what is a one experience, a one-shot experience for the general public. So that's what it looks like. And then what I think is nice is the fact that you get this micro report a week after. It gives you, like I said earlier, it gives you a second chance to relive partially this experience, and also it gives you something to share with your friends. So it kind of achieved the goal of the word of mouth, so that then now you can show it, and then also, oh wow, you went there. Oh okay, now I'll go next weekend, which is kind of like the happening we try to build with our participants or locations. And right now, this is how we work. I mean, eventually we try to find ways. We have vision on how to scale this up even more. Obviously, it's always challenging. The business is always a challenge, but we have pretty good ways of thinking about it, about how we can go to 10 times bigger. At least that's the next stage we're aiming for. And then the way we organize it, it can be a contest, so people can be invited to say, hey, in a participation to wear the headset at this event. It can be we organize meetups, so people can just register, and sometimes it can be as simple as, hey, we'll go at this place, we'll set up the headset, and we'll walk on this street. No, I was talking earlier in introduction of the spontaneity of Montreal. This is something that I recorded. So we went in Montreal in the main, and we ended up surprisingly in the jazz festival that was happening at the same moment. And we see it in the data. When we reach the jazz festival, people are more joyful. So at this point, I like the idea of just having fun with it. I mean, sometimes I have mandates that are more like, okay, we need to study this experience and know what needs to be fixed. So this is, I call them serious experiences. Then we have the sweet side, which is just the technology interests people, emotion interests people, and it's just a happening, an opportunity to present the technology. For us, it's an opportunity to improve it. For people, it's an opportunity to learn about the field of emotions and better connect with themselves. So I like to think that we're not always so serious and just like, hey, we're just having fun and trying things out.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And my question is, do you think that it will be possible at some point to visualize the emotions in a real time? Yes, in a form maybe of certain visual, I don't know, installation, lasers, whatnot, anything that can give a real time feedback, not after 7 days, but you know real experiences. Yes.
So this is something that is not the Nucleus-Hermès, but with a movie producer, we built it just came out a adaptive movie experience where people put the Muse, the EEG headset, and the concept is so the image is the same for everyone, but you wear a audio headset and the sound is adapted to each individual. So everybody see the same movie, but they have a different auditory experience. So this came out. We're still working, fine tuning a few things, but it came out in August, so it's very recent. We've been working on this for a long time now. In terms of the Nucleus-Hermès, so I have a plan. I hope I'm not overselling it, but I'm currently myself working on I call it BCI guided storytelling. I want to have it done by the end of the year. I'll probably go to CES, and the goal is to showcase it at CES. And it's basically you watch it, and it's used real-time feedback. The story is built with feedback with generative AI, so ChatGPT so I use ChatGPT, I use Stability AI to get the image, and I use another engine, I think it's called Lovo, to do the narration, to generate the narration. So you watch the story, and the whole story is unique because it's generated on the fly. And I don't want to say how, but I'll go into more details. It's still being designed, but basically part of the story. I try to make as many parts of the story to be consequent on your feeling and your state of mind. My goal is to reach maximum, but not just as I want to be careful not to make it a random noise generator, but really to be coherent. To use like your relationship with characters to guide how this character will evolve in the story. So that's a concept I'm working on right now. I have a lot of work. Obviously, we have a lot of work, the company, but this is a concept that I hope to be able. So this require real-time feedback, obviously. So to answer your question, by the end of the year, we should get it. And the system itself, just to clarify, population model is still a little bit rough. To get like accurate emotional states across with anyone is still a little bit rough, especially there's a few emotions that tend to be mixed up, like fear and surprise and to have a similar muscle activity. So these are tougher, but when you train a model for yourself or you calibrate the system, we reach above 85% success rate in the A-class classification of facial expression. So when you do a calibration or you train a model on an individual, we get pretty good results. But eventually the goal is to have like a very good population model that anybody can wear it and it works, obviously. So I do expect by the end of the year to have a real-time demo of the system. It's not so much complexity, actually. It's just a matter of doing it. But and you do need to work within a few constraints of processing power and stuff. One thing we did at some point is to reduce. So currently we generate one data point twice a second. So at 2 hertz, we have a data point of emotional cognitive states. When we were doing the movie with facial expressions, now this feature has been dropped. Initially, we had feature expressions. We had one data point every 5 seconds. So sometimes you have some constraints to work with when you want to do real time, but it works. I mean, the concept works in itself, yeah.
That's amazing. And actually, I look forward to you coming again to our podcast in the future to
I'll
give
be
us
happy to.
an update on what's happening. I think you're doing absolutely amazing things.
I'll give you one thing that just amused me. It's not a real concept, but I always envisioned that one day you could watch a movie and like the canned laugh, the laugh that comes with a comedy, like and every time you laugh, there's some laugh that comes with you that accompanies you. There's just, I don't know if it can be really fun. It's just a gimmick that at one point say, hey, what if we have a comedy show? Every time you laugh, you have like this canned laugh that comes on top to make you feel to encourage you in your laugh. So anyway, it's a new. So I'm not an artist myself, so I mean, there's just so much that I can explore myself as with the real-time feedback. Obviously, I mean, the goal is to bring the system to showcase it, but then is to team up with organization that will take the new possibilities and bring them into something that is that we can't even envision, especially with the generative AI that is coming up. I mean, I really think that entertainment is on the verge of a revolution in terms of both the feedback being taken into account, the generative AI that comes in, and I coined a term recently. I don't know if it's being used elsewhere, but I call it utainment. So the idea that you have entertainment is individualized, personalized. I really think this is the future of the things that will be happening in the next few years. I don't know how big it can get. I don't know like how it's going to happen and all, but I really think that we're looking at the future where you have entertainment that is readapt both to you and how you feel at this moment. And I'm really looking forward to see how things will evolve. And hopefully React will be an ingredient in this happening.
Some type of neuroadaptive entertainment. Yes, that's absolutely amazing, and of course it's our entrepreneurial podcast series, and you already mentioned several things. One of them was that it's pretty hard to be entrepreneur in neurotech industry. You also said that business is always challenging. So, what are the biggest challenges that you think are in the way of developing neurotech as an entrepreneur?
There's many ways to build a business. I can only speak for what I know, obviously. So in terms of React, it's been a blessing and a curse is we didn't receive investments. So I have many friends that went to VCs and they got it. Ask me why we didn't get any investment from VCs. That's okay. I'm not stuck on this. So that's the main challenge was how do we develop because it's expensive to develop this type of technology and how do we develop it? How do we fund the development? And also when you talk with the potential clients at some point, especially in the video game, this happened. You say, does it work? And you say, look, we want to work with someone to develop it such that we know we can measure. We've done tests. We know we can measure, but no to really bring. I mean, at some point we need to test it on the field. Then they say one of the answers we got at first is, okay, well, come see us when it works, when you can show that using your technology makes our game the best. No, so finding these early adopters to say, I want to work with you, even though the technology is not exactly ready. And combine this with funding the development. When you're in the business world, everything a lot is driven by money. It's not because you want it; it's just like a matter of fact. For us, it has been very hard initially to. I think it took at least a year of work before we even had like a first version that can. No, because when you start today, it's a little bit easier. I'd say when we started, just collecting data and pairing with the Muse, pairing with the wristband, synchronizing with the camera, analyzing emotion, just this to at least a year to just get something that works reliably. So also, it's not that it works when you every time you want to use it. So this has been challenging. Then I say the way you pitch the technology has been extremely challenging. As well, at first, the first mistake I think we made was to pitch it as a biometry system. So at first we come in and say, oh, we use biometry, which a few people know. Some people have a big idea of what it is, but then you pitch the what and not the why or the what does it do. No, so at first and what happened when you pitch biometry is people will invite you. Say, oh, come pitch it to us. And then you say, oh yeah, we measure this, we measure that, we do this and that. And they find it very entertaining, but you haven't sold them on what you can do with it. Okay. And one of the turning point in terms of the cell activity is at one point I launched a challenge. I say we now are forbidden from pitching it as a brain computer interface or a biometry system. We don't have the right to do this in the pitch. It's a fun fact. It's something you can add at some point in the pitch, but it is not the point of attention. It's all about what can you do with it. No, so now when I was pitching this morning, so now when I pitch with someone, so I say, hey, let's say like the powerhouse, I say, hey, I have this project. It's a marketing, experiential marketing stunt. The idea is that we come with our tools that are now now it's easier because I can show the attraction. Say, look, it brings attention. The fact that we have a headset, it attracts attention. People want to talk about it. It's super interesting. But the goal is what I'm selling to you is basically we come and showcase your experience. We help you to understand how it is, and we present it to others. We show how your experience is great. And you see, the pitch is not about the technology. It's really about what we can bring to you. And the fun fact, or at least the differentiator, is how we do it. And this really changed the game because suddenly we were more invested into what we can do with them and it affects everything, the way you think, the way you discuss and all. And the technology just became a tool rather than the reason of being there. And this, if anybody is starting in the field, I'm a little bit harsh when I talk with newcomers in the business. I like to help people. So, I mean, anytime there's a newcomer, even if it's a direct competitor, I'll still try to help them because I think everybody in one way or another, if we all work together, the pie is still large enough for all of us. So later we'll compete. Today we can help. And I tell them, don't pitch it as a measurement tool. Pitch it as something else. Measurement is not the right pitch it as make it clear what is the value prop, why you should measure, not we can measure is what can we do together. And oh, by the way, we achieve this because we measure. This, I think, is super important. Then you need a good network. Initially, you need to find your early adopters. You need to find the people that will jump on board with you, even though it's mature as a technology. So these people are very special because they have a vision. Now, often they come with their own vision. They see what you're doing. And they say, you know what? I know it's not ready, but I have my vision and I know can be realized with your life. So let's work together. These people, you form a very strong bond, and this is where you find initially your people, your first clients and partner. I prefer to call them partners when you have this relationship. And then I was saying that we didn't get investment, and I call it a curse because obviously you start with no money. So now you have to use your own time, your own funds. So it's a personal investment, obviously. But where it was a blessing, I'll tell you why, is I'm pretty sure that if we had investment initially, we would be bankrupt today. Simply because when you start a business, the marketing research, or at least understanding the market that you want to go into, the market fit and all this stuff, if you have the money first, to spend it on things that don't work at the end of the day. No, I mean, it's very easy to spend money. Us, we had a struggle. We tried video game that didn't work, not because the technology doesn't work, but because the field was not ready for technology. I tried website. There was some interest, but I'm sorry to make it the harsh way, but there was no money. So people, you have $3,000 of budget to make a website. Why would you pay $1,000 to measure how good it is? Now, at some point, so you have some markets like that doesn't work. And our first place that we got into is customer experience. And like I said, retail stores are kind of in a crisis with Amazon and all this stuff. So you find at some point someone that needs to innovate. You find the market that they need you. And from there, it takes time. But from there, things get easier and easier. And then suddenly you find what works. And the marketing pitch was not the first thing. The first thing was we help you understand experience. But then we noticed, it's funny because I had my first clients was like, oh yeah, come measure. And then, oh, send us the data. And then I was seeing that they were using it for marketing purpose. Say, hey, so, and once it happens 3 times in a row, we say, hey, I should pitch that. No, I mean, people are using it for marketing purpose. Let's just make it part of the value prop. And you need to listen to the market and all. Like I said, it's hard. I don't think it's only BCI. All innovations, at first, people don't know what to do with it. No, they understand. They say, oh, you can measure emotion. There's a little voice that said, this is pertinent. This is useful, but how we use it. And then you need to yourself learn how to use it. You need to yourself help them using it. And then at some point also there's some unexpected event, like generative AI comes in, that suddenly things start to pick up. You need to be patient. I like to put it this way. I don't think it's a good business to actually bring computer interface. Maybe now today, but I've seen business that much faster than what we're doing. I don't consider, in that sense, the joke I'm saying is that I'm not myself a true entrepreneur, because if I was, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I'm a passionate. There's a business, there's a way to do it, but don't dream of being a unicorn from the one day to the next through BCI. It's a much more time consuming, much more latent game to play, but it's a fun thing. It's an innovative approach, and we all have the hope that eventually things will come to another level. But at the same time, honestly, I'm just super happy to be able to live out of my passion. I'm already successful in that sense, so the rest is just bonus.
Yes, thank you so much for all this explanation and suggestions. And I already wanted to have you on our next podcast. I'm so excited about everything you have to offer to people, to our listeners, to the world. That's absolutely amazing. We're already nearing, of course, the end of our podcast. You saw neurotech companies that were starting. You say that some of them already are really, really doing well, have 20, 40 employees, and so on and so forth. So, and some probably not that great yet. Yes, and some maybe even switch to doing something different. So, what in your mind separates those who succeed and grow and those that maybe didn't do it as successfully as those other companies? What to look for to be in that first trend? Yes, for those who are starting.
So that's a very complex question. And myself, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in every types of businesses there is. There's definitely a big difference between being a VC funded business versus a revenue backed business or even private investor business. There's a big difference in the way you approach your business development between the two. And I'm not going to claim to have understand everything about VC business, but the emphasis on growing the value of the business is the main objective, as far as I know, when you're a VC back. So this, I'll just say that I don't know enough to go deeper into this. Now, when you're a revenue backed business, the thing that you cannot escape is your market fit. You don't have investment. Investment is not a form of revenue that you get. So you need to find a market fit. And I think this has some elegance to it. You cannot do anything if you don't solve this issue of what is your value prop and what is the market I want to work with. I'll go with my own mistakes, and this is things that I've known. So the biggest mistakes I've made that I've learned from is the biggest and singular. This one is to do your markets research, to talk with your clients, to get the feedback of the people. I like to think that there are business opportunities in every industries. Every industries have some problem to solve, some situations that they're dealing with, and that if you come with the right solution, the business will explode on its own, just organically, because you're solving a true problem. It's well known in the field that engineers, scientists, inventors, we have a tendency to come up with, say, hey, I have an idea and I'll market it. And then you start with your idea, you start with the initial funds that you have and your time, and you build the idea, and then you go in the market and boom, it doesn't work. Okay, this is a story that I'm pretty sure repeats itself like many, many times. And then you end up with a classic solution that is called, I have a solution and search for a problem. Okay, this is something you'll hear a lot in the field, and everybody thinks that they're different. I'll be honest with you, every newcomers, they say, no, us, it's different. The market has evolved since. And once you start to research, you find many companies before us that tried to go into UX, video games with biometry, and many that came after. And guess what? Nobody made it. So there is a reason that is beyond anything that you can do, even if you're the smartest person. So try to prevent. So there's two things. So first, before you find your market, you want to be as lean as possible. This is the planning phase. You have all the time in the world. It only costs you to get on the phone or on Zoom and talk with people. And then I even call it's both the most efficient way, the laziest way, because I call it the laziest because I'll tell you what, you don't even need to come with an idea. Talk with people, let them tell you about what is their problem, what is their situation, and go market by market until you find something that resonates enough, that is strong enough with always keep the money in mind, not because we're necessarily a hardcore capitalist, but just because a business, if you want to start a business, you have to play by the rule. And the rule is you need to bring money in. Otherwise, I call it an expensive hobby. So fine. And this, even if now I apply this even to my clients, I say, It's not costly to invest $5,000 to prevent you from making a $100,000 mistake. So finding the right market, finding the right problem to solve is something that is very cheap to do. And you have all the time in the world to find what is the good business I want to build. And this is really time, and you build a network, you talk with people, it's super fun. You often meet many very interesting people. At least those who accept to meet you are generally very funny. Also, there's one thing that I'm not a salesman I just became, I guess, one over time. Surprisingly, I find it very fun. But if someone accepts to talk to you, there is a reason. You have something to say. Listen a lot. And you just chat with them and let them explain why, you have a basic pitch of what you think you can solve. I mean, this is just like but even then you can just talk, I want to learn about your industry. This is something that generates some interesting chat. You say, hey, look, I want to learn about what you're doing. Can we meet? And this works surprisingly well. Then you bring them progressively on what is the problem you're facing? What are the challenges of your industry? This, I still think of, it's super interesting to discuss with people. And then at some point you nail it. At some point it becomes clear. Now you go into a test phase, you build a prototype, or you just try to see how much of this problem is real, how hard it is to solve, because sometimes you have some problems that everybody has, but there's no solution. But this, I think, in retrospect, I'm not saying that I did this to the T, but this, I think, is the safest way to start a business, because once you have a good market, you have a good network, solving the technological issues almost becomes the simplest element. I mean, solving a problem is quite easy when you know what the problem is, but finding the right problem, finding the right market, and this is the basics of, if you're going into an incubator of any business, this is what I tell them. I say, don't start working on developing the solution. Go talk to the people, build your network, talk, listen a lot, try to figure out what is the need, and you have all the time in the world to get the right idea. If it takes a year, it's not a problem. It's going to be much more problem if you develop a product, adapt yourself, and then are stuck with a problem, a solution with no problem. This is going to be an issue. Just not starting a business today and taking the right amount of time to find a solution, this is where you want to put your time. I always like there's a motto that says, if I'm given 3 hours to chop down a tree, I take the first 2 to find my axe, to sharpen my axe. And this is a rule that you learn to live by. It's harder when you're younger. This is what you do in engineering. If you start the software, don't start coding right away. You start by building a schematics. You try to see what is it going to be used for. And somehow this is how you engineer a business, basically. And you need to respect that, because otherwise only bad things will happen if you just try. And this is probably the most frustrating thing. Some people are just lucky. I mean, you have to deal with it. Life is not fair. Some people come with their idea and they get $1 million the next day for some reason, and then it just go up from there. It's not fun. I mean, it's not funny. Obviously, you feel jealousy at some point, but look, this is life. This is life. Some people are luckier. But if you want to take a safe path, find the problem first, then bring the solution.
Thank you so much for all this advice. It's very, very valuable. And, even for me listening, because I'm building my Neurocareers practice. So I took so many things from you into consideration. So thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you please tell our listeners what is the best way to connect with you if they're interested maybe in your products and your developments, and also where they can learn about the product that you are building?
So go on the website at re-ak.com, so react.com, and subscribe to the newsletter. This is, so we just launched a new website. This is really where I want to bring the people around. And obviously, I mean, there's always some level of community building. I'm active on Discord, on a few Discord. I think I'm on the Wearable one. I'm on the, how is it called? Intuitive XR. So anytime there's something about video games and stuff, adaptive experience, brain computer interface, I try to be there. So feel free to reach out. Super happy to exchange. Sometimes I have to say maybe in a few weeks, but I'm always happy to meet. If you come on the website, subscribe to the newsletter or fill in the contact form, this is the most direct way to keep in touch. And the product, I expect, hopefully next year in 2024, my goal is to have about 50 units to go out. So 50 units for early adopters that wants to use it play with it. It doesn't come empty-handed. It comes with the full functionalities. I have like advanced analytics that will be that is available for the system. Currently, I'm working. I have 3 devices that are in the hands of clients. So you see, we're already testing it. Next year, the goal is to reach 50, and I'll be super happy to help you first to use the device. Definitely, if you want to build a business around the device, I encourage you. But I'm telling you, it's hard. But I'll be very happy to share with you how I built my business around the device. And if you want to try yourself at it, I mean, it works, but it is hard, and that's definitely how the best way to stay in touch. Yes.
Thank you so much, Frédéric. Maybe we can have a product launch podcast next year. So
I'm very active on LinkedIn. Forget to drop this one. Very active on LinkedIn. If you want to connect and follow, I'll be happy to establish a connection as well.
Yes, and we will add all this information into our podcast notes. It will be all available for our listeners. So, thank you so much, Frédéric. Is there anything you would like to tell our listeners as we end our podcast?
It was super nice to be with you. Thank you very much for the invitation to everyone. I mean, I think my only message is basically don't forget to have fun, to enjoy the moment. I mean, sometimes we find ourselves stressed when we have objectives and we want to get there as fast as possible. But don't forget to just enjoy the present moment and just to be happy at some point of what you have. Even if it's a small business, be happy, because I mean, it's still a chance that we have to live our dreams independent of the scale at which it is, and take a moment to appreciate it. And have an amazing day.
Amazing suggestions and advice. Thank you so much for being with us, with our listeners. We all very much appreciate all your insights, all everything you shared, and I wish you all possible success in your business and in your product development, and just living this life to the fullest. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the entrepreneurial world of neuroscience and neurotechnologies. I hope you've been inspired by the stories of those who are turning groundbreaking ideas into impactful realities. If you are looking for more guidance on succeeding in Neurocareers, book a free consultation with me, your podcast host, Dr. K, at the Institute of Neuroapproaches. So, what are you waiting for? Let's navigate the path to success in the world of Neurocareers and make the impossible possible together.